Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of ZenChats. I'm Zeneca, and I'm here with Chris Wallace, amazing person that I've known in the space. We've circled each other, we've chatted online, and I'm just thrilled to have him here on the podcast. He is the founder of UltraDAO, the project lead at Woodies, which is just a phenomenal, amazing, family-friendly, cute, fantastic NFT project I've loved for a while. An artist, NFT artist yourself, and yeah, it's just a treat to have you here. Welcome. How are you?
Thank you. I'm good. I'm good. Thanks for having me. I've been a fan for a long time. Like you said, we've sort of circled each other, and just haven't really had the chance to sit down and have a nice chat. So it's great to be here.
We we co-tweeted something yesterday,
We
which
did. Yeah.
I don't know what that is yet. Really,
I don't.
thing.
Yeah. No. I heard somebody, a friend of mine was talking about co-tweets. I didn't know. I thought he was talking about an old social media platform called co-tweet. But then I obviously found out that there was a thing called
Yeah,
co-tweeting, and so you had tweeted something, and then I was retweeting it, and it popped up literally while I was retweeting it,
yeah,
and adding text, and so I was like, oh, I'll just send this over send this over to Zeneca and see if he wants to
yeah.
co-tweet, and so you accepted it, and that's both of our first co-tweet is live now.
Yep.
What did you call it? You said it was
I mean,
a co-quo retweet.
right. So we co-tweeted.
Yeah.
I was gonna say you co-tweeted, but that
Right.
doesn't make sense. We co-tweeted, and then I commented, and then I retweeted, and it was like a co-quo retweet
Yeah.
inception.
It was
Tweetception.
great.
Anyway, I'm sure we're maybe boring some of the listeners talking about our tweeting. I always like to dig into and get into the background of my guests because I think that's it. Honestly, I think it's fascinating. Everyone has such interesting and different journeys into this whole crazy Web3 NFT space.
Yeah.
So yeah, take us through. What were you doing pre NFTs, and how did you find yourself in this NFT space?
Sure. So I was actually an executive at a design agency, and was doing work with all types of different businesses, mainly building out like WordPress websites. And so I was the vice president of the design team. So I had a team of about 20 designers that I would work with and hire to bring onto the team and things like that. And I actually got started in NFTs from working with and hiring a designer who was a visual artist as well. And so he was, making these cool little like marbles that he was minting on Foundation. And I didn't know what Foundation was. So, I kind of heard about it, saw some of the stuff that he was doing just through our chats. And then he asked me, hey, do you want an invite? And I was like, I don't know what that means, but sure. Like I'm always down to, kind of try new things and look at new technologies and stuff like that. And so he invited me to Foundation. I started making art just because I'm a designer. I like visual arts. I like digital, stuff like cool animations and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I hadn't really gotten into it myself, but I was like, I'll try it. I'll just see kind of where this goes. And so I started creating stuff, and I think the first thing I made was just some weird like abstract animation that I uploaded to Foundation, and somebody bid on it, and I was like, why would anybody want this? You know what I mean? Like, I thought it was
Yeah.
cool. I thought it was cool. Don't get me wrong, but I was like, why would anybody want this? And
When was this, like, timeline
this
wise?
was back in.
Was this last year?
This was back in 2021. So it was really like February, March timeframe, I believe. So yeah, so I just started like basically uploading these pieces, and people would bid on them. They would sell, and I would freak out because every time I realized somebody wants this, like it was just this weird new relationship that I'd never really thought about before with collectors. And from there, obviously, I got into collecting. I started, UltraDAO a few months later. Started kind of building a community around all of this, new world that I had found, and then eventually quit my job in August when we were getting really serious with launching the Woodies project. And from there, I've just been in the space full time since then.
Yeah. Amazing. It sounds like we got into the space around the same time, early 2021. Yeah, which I think there's like a lot of people got into the space that time. There's not too many people who got in during 2019, 2020. That's like bear market time. No one was really caring about it.
Yeah, I mean, that was like the OGs for sure before us. So I think a lot of people got in around that time. Obviously, like, you know, when our Twitter following started taking off, it got pretty crazy. I mean, I don't know what you're at now, but like it was just an explosion of people entering the space and wanting, you know, kind of thirsting for this knowledge of this new technology and crypto art and everything, which has been really, really awesome.
Yeah.
It's been, I kind of have called it a digital renaissance, you know, to sort of see all these new ways of creating and you know, putting your art out into the world has been really, really interesting.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. Digital renaissance. I think, I mean, I fully agree. And I think we're still like in the really early stages of that. Like we've seen what's possible and like a few people have experimented with it, but in terms of like percentage of the world, it's a fraction of a fraction of a percent.
Yeah.
You mentioned UltraDAO. Take us through what UltraDAO is, how it started, and maybe what you're up to these days with it.
Yeah, so UltraDAO, it really started out initially just as this small idea within another sort of group of collectors and friends, where we were trying to collect these pieces from an artist named Liquid Density. And he had sort of set up this really cool system where he had factions, and different factions were sort of competing against each other to acquire these pieces and then have these specific powers that, you know, that they hold with those pieces. And so there was a point where I basically said to the group, like, hey, why don't we start a DAO? I mean, not fully knowing what that meant at the time.
Yeah.
Why don't we start a DAO and we'll pool our funds, and we can actually go out and just level everybody. We can just go buy all these pieces. We can sort of hoard everything. You know, we talked about it, we joked about it, but at the end of the day, we were like, let's actually do it. And people were like, wow, like you guys are getting really serious really fast. Yeah. And we did. What's funny is we started it. We didn't actually end up buying any of the pieces using DAO funds, but we did end up sort of taking that into collecting other NFTs. So we you know, had a small group that joined the DAO, mostly artists, but also a few collectors like Guy NorCal, if you're familiar with Guy. Is a part of it, and some other folks that joined us. And so we would just go out and collect what we consider to be historically relevant and, you know, culturally sort of important NFTs. And so we were out there collecting Yatrita pieces, which are really amazing and incredible. We were collecting like documentary style videos that were minted on the blockchain. So all these different really cool you know, pieces from different countries and different artists in those different places. So we have a nice little you know, collection now, but we have since sort of pivoted away from the collecting aspect and are focusing more so on the creator side and sort of incubating ideas and creativity at this point. So it's definitely pivoted. We launched Woodies out of UltraDAO. It was our first big project that we sort of incubated. So we launched that back in like September last year, 2021. And out of that, you know, obviously we sold that out in about 30 minutes with a kind of a unique mint pass system similar to Pixel Vault.
I remember that.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, it was. I was on vacation and I just got back, like, and within 1 or 2 days, I was still in like a real rusty, blurry, non-minting mode. And then I saw, I'm pretty sure it was Kevin Rose tweeted about it. And I was like, huh, these look good. I looked at the website. I clicked through, saw UltraDAO. I was like, interesting. Looks cool. All right, I'm going to mint some. And then, yeah, it was a really fun, cool experience.
Yeah, I mean, it was what I consider to be like a really nice mint experience, because it wasn't the gas wars. Everybody's like competing to sort of get, you know, an NFT and pay exorbitant amounts to miners and stuff like that. And then there was also a really cool reveal process. I don't know if you went through it, but when you actually turn your mint pass into, we called it the adoption process or whatever, and you would adopt a Woody, you would travel to Wonder Mist Forest, and you would sort of see yourself, kind of set down there, and it would reveal live, because it was all, 100% live generation. They weren't determined or anything like that. So at the time of mint, it was literally giving you all of the traits and combining them all in real time, and revealing them live right in front of you, which was a really cool experience. I know I sat down with my kids and went through the process a number of times because, I had to buy, I don't know why, but I bought so many mint passes. I had like 120 or something. And so I just kept minting over and over. And you could do like 20 at a time. Awesome. So you could kind of just like click through all of them and sort of see what you got, which was a really cool experience. So.
Yeah, no, that was so much fun. I definitely remember doing that with mine, and just like you said, generated at mint, where most projects don't do that. They like pre-select, they generate behind the scenes and get 10,000 together, and then they randomly allocate those 10,000, but they've got the 10,000 set. We sort of jumped ahead a bit though. Like, let's go back to what Woodies is and where the idea for Woodies came from.
Yeah, so Woodies was really our first project through UltraDAO. The idea actually came about on Twitter. We have one of our artists, Lucrece, who's very well-known digital artist. Some consider his style to be sort of a glitch, hand-drawn style. He actually was just sort of playing around with this idea of, minting 10,000 planks of wood so that he could build himself a house. And I was just kind of joking, with him on Twitter saying, call it Woodies, and it'll mint out, 10K in no time. It sold out super quick. And, we just sort of joked about it. And then in our group chat with our UltraDAO group chat with all these artists and collectors, we just sort of, started riffing on ideas and throwing ideas back and forth. Mm-hmm. And it was like 1 a.m. and I created this Woodies Twitter account and just started like tweeting all of these memes about, there's this one GIF where it's like Tinder. So it's like this guy swiping right on like wood, just like blocks of wood. And so we were just having a good time, just like, just playing with all the different ideas. And he actually, Lucrece actually went in and, designed this like wooden plank. And we put that up on Twitter and everybody was like, oh, this is really fun and interesting. And so we started just like riffing on this idea of what is a Woody. We actually ended up getting all the artists together from the DAO, and we sort of told them, go off and create what you think a Woody looks like. And so they all kind of went to their corners and drew, whatever they thought that would be as a PFP. And one of our artists, J838, came back with these cute little like humanoid shaped creatures that were sort of reminiscent of like Pinocchio, and everybody just sort of gravitated to it. And they were like, oh, that's it. Like that's the concept. And I think everybody liked this idea of like a wooden plank, but we felt like it was a bit shallow, and really more of like a meme, which obviously memes have their place, and it's, the goblin towns of the world are pretty, doing fine. I mean, they're, the memes are doing fine, but, we sort of decided like, hey, we really want this to be a project, like a fairly serious project where we're building a world around all of this and building this, IP that we can then sort of take in different directions and build a story, and all of that. So that's really where it came from. From there we sort of, released that 10K, and now we're working on, 3D, Woodies, which will be in Decentraland. Really, it's going to be the first PFP collection to be in Decentraland. There's a few that have been approved, but none that have actually made it and been released into Decentraland as a linked wearable. And then we're also working on a short film as well, which will be released in August. which is, in my opinion, going to be really some of the best content we've seen from an NFT project. We're working with a partner, interestingly enough, called Woodblock. And they are an
Total
animation
coincidence?
studio. Yeah, I don't know how we got connected with them. Richard, who is our CMO and community manager of sorts, he actually got connected with them somehow and sort of brought them to the table. And yeah, it was just like Woodies plus Woodblock. Like, why wouldn't we? You know, and the work that they have done in the past is just incredible. It's like the top quality animation that you would see from like DreamWorks or Pixar, right? Like, and that was exactly the type of partner that we really knew, you know, would be a good fit for us. So.
That's really exciting. Yeah. You mentioned Richard. I was really hoping to meet him in Amsterdam for MetAms. We were again circling each other, and he had a speech and I had a speech, and there was an event, and I couldn't go to that because I had this and this. And I was like,
Yeah.
And then in New York, we were going to do a walk,
got
and then
COVID,
I was
yeah.
stuck with COVID in my hotel room. So it's but yeah, but life goes on. You've touched on the story and the narrative and the lore a bit for Woodies, and I think that's something that's always appealed to me. For projects in general, I think that story-driven projects have so much more depth and substance to them, and that's something that Woodies has always, I think, done really well from day one. What has your process been like? Do you have a creative writer, creative writers on staff, people working on this lore? And was that like a conscious decision from day one, or did you pivot into that?
Yeah, so I think after we launched, and really before, you know, we had this sense that we wanted it to be deeper than just a PFP project, which is why we introduced core characters, you know, really early on when we initially dropped. You know, we sort of released these core characters over time and gave them stories as we dropped them. So each one comes out with very rich backstory and lore that everybody that is following along can really kind of dig into and you know, sort of experience. And that's going to get, you know, deepened even further, you know, once we've actually got some animated content and things like that. But we do have somebody, we have a story lead, Crystal, who does a phenomenal job. And she's been working hard for the past few months to expand and sort of deepen the lore and sort of round it out beyond the initial story, which came out as we dropped those core characters over time. So yeah, she's done a phenomenal job. Obviously, a lot of that is going to be included in this initial short film, but then beyond that, there's going to be a lot of things that actually include and sort of bring the holders along in the story as well. And so that's, I think, one part of it that you can't ignore, especially with a more decentralized brand and approach, is, you know, the narrative of what happens on the blockchain and otherwise, you know, sort of helps define that story. And so that's something that we definitely want to weave as part of that narrative over time too.
There's so many like interesting things you can do with collectors when they hold part of the collection. Like, you can include them into the narrative and the story and decision making. We've seen with projects where the community that can decide what happens to these characters and all sorts of fascinating things. What are your I guess like longer term like goals or plans for Woodies in term, like I'm talking like 5 years, 10 years down the line? Are you trying to build a massive universe, an IP thing? Is it more heavily onto the metaverse side, or are you like traditional animations and stuff? Have you thought about it too much?
I mean, obviously, like we have dreams, you know, for sure of making it a really huge, you know, sort of entertainment media. Great example of sort of decentralized version on that sort of originated on the blockchain. Obviously, like that would be a huge goal of ours, is really taking that as far as we can. I think the big thing for us now is escape velocity outside of the sort of the NFT and Web3 bubble is sort of the first step for us. Is how do we gain, you know, the awareness from people outside of that bubble? How do we build a fandom around Woodies and these characters that are so cute and, interesting and have depth and their stories have meaning. Obviously, there's an environmentalist sort of bent to everything that we do. It is telling an important story to future generations. And so the more that we can continue to sort of pass that along, the better off, I think everybody will be. And so, yeah, that's definitely a huge goal of ours. I mean, it really, for us, it's content creation, obviously animated, feature films, TV series. We're not super particular on which one to do first. Obviously, we're starting with a short film to sort of get something out there that people can connect with and sort of learn the story really quickly. And then from there, we'll branch into everything, right? It'll be merchandise, toys, games, you name it. Yeah.
All the good stuff, all the fun stuff. Yeah. Do you want to take us through, or rather listeners through, like the story, the overarching lore of Woodies? Like you mentioned there was like a really important message.
Yeah, absolutely.
Being told.
Yeah. So, the main story kind of starts with Arden, who is our protagonist of sorts in the Woodies origin story. And Arden basically is, just a tree in the forest at first. And then all of a sudden he's sort of awakened to all of his friends, and other trees sort of being gone. And he's been turned into a Woody. And he sort of has to go and find his friends and understand what happened to them. And so he goes on this journey where he is, sort of walking through, part of the forest has been completely, knocked down and hauled away by, the logger, who is sort of the bad guy, at least initially. And so he sort of has to figure out, okay, like, who can I trust? How do I find, the rest of my family and friends? And so he goes off and he starts searching. And that's where he encounters others in the forest. I'm not going to go too deep into it because anybody that wants to learn more about it can obviously, dig into it and sort of understand better what happens there. But eventually he does end up, at the logger's, yard, and has to, figure out how to rescue his friends. So.
Amazing. Yeah. There's a lot of depth to it, and you didn't go all the way into it, but it's there and it exists. And I really encourage everyone go check it out and dig into it. Like it's fascinating. So,
what's interesting there. So there are a lot of characters that have roots in things that we have done, right? Part of the lore actually is like the logger comes from his literal likeness comes from our dev Bitcoinski, who literally looks exactly like him. Like he was drawn to look exactly like him, and I didn't realize that. Amazing. And our lead, one of our lead artists, Gossamer, who did all the core characters, finally, like, at least, collected all the ideas, drew a lot of them from scratch, also took a few of the concepts and sort of made, finished the concepts out and delivered them. But she just came in, and we sort of told her, what ideas we had, and she would pull from ideas and things from her background as a tattoo artist, and sort of just combine all these things. And there's really amazing masks, and if you're familiar with Tiger Bob, I mean, there's like tiger masks and lion masks and all of these different, sort of these like cultural, nods to different things that are just gorgeous, just amazing. And we've been working with our animation studio to sort of bring those to life, and Gossamer has been designing all of the concept art and everything for the animation studio, and they've literally brought all of these characters to life in just the most incredible way. So we're very excited for that part to sort of, because it's one thing to see just a PFP, right, or to see
Yeah.
the potential in, because we always talk about like, oh, Bay C, you have commercial rights, or Woodies, you have commercial rights, you can do whatever you want. But until you actually go out and do something with it, it's still just a PFP. It's still just art, right? And I
Yeah.
think once people see the potential of what can be done through something like this, through a short
Yeah.
film, they're going to understand, kind of what we're talking about, with how important it is to own these characters and develop stories and to bring them to life through animation and whatnot. So it's pretty exciting stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds super exciting. We saw it a little bit with the other side trailer, like the 30-second
Yeah.
clip or whatever that
Yeah.
Yuga Labs dropped. It generated so much buzz and excitement because it was a cool video. It was like really
It
well
was like
made,
Fortnite,
fun.
right?
These characters came to life.
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. And it had like, you saw the apes, and then there's like World of Women and Cryptodes and a bunch of characters in this vehicle. And it was like, oh, this is like all these PFPs come to life and animated, and there's life, blown into them. And we're going to see so much more of that, I think, over the next few
Definitely.
years.
Well, and it takes
gonna be
it
really,
takes a
really
while to
exciting.
develop really quality,
Yeah.
content. So I think a lot of people currently, all the speculators in the space, don't have enough patience, right? Like, because they need to get their investment out of whatever projects they're in.
Yeah.
So I think eventually you're going to start to see these collections sort of turn over to real fans. Real fans will start buying in as they become fans of these brands that are getting out of the bubble of crypto and NFTs. So,
Yeah.
and that I think is really going to be the true test for whether these projects will be successful or not, is when we see, can they get to a real fandom, and not just people that are asking when price go up.
Yeah, yeah. We're sort of like, we're recording this in July 2022, so like in the depths of a pretty significant bear market for NFTs, for crypto, for the macro, everything. And a lot of projects have like, almost every project has their floor tanked a ton, and like people have just left the space. Like engagement is down. There's far fewer people on Twitter and Discords and Twitter Spaces, and it's like those speculators have like largely been flushed out. And I mean, I think this is kind of a healthy thing for the market. I think it sucks for people that lost money and were overextended, but like lesson learned, all that kind of stuff. And it's gonna be really telling. The projects that stick around, the community that stick around, that are still here 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, 2 years from now, that have been building, creating this IP, this lore, this story, this community, to really, yeah, sort of reach the next wave, the next generation. And I don't know, what are your thoughts on this whole bear market we're in right now? Just like from the perspective of, project lead at Woodies, but also just as a collector.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely, it's a learning experience, I think, for a lot of us. I know it's a learning experience for me, just in general, just because like NFTs for me didn't exist, as far as I understood them, before, February or March of 2021. And so, everything was up only, everything was being minted out, immediately. And now we're starting to understand, what does it look like when it's not, right? And so, I mean, for me, like, I think it's a really good learning experience, to understand sort of what is it going to be like when it's not just a bunch of people, hyped for the next mint, and how do you deliver something that's really, really high quality that they want? Because at the end of the day, we're selling, an idea, a concept, right? It's not just an NFT that is also a financial instrument that people are just trying to eke, money out of. I think for us, it's like, how do we build something that it goes so far beyond that people can just be a fan of and, participate with. And so that for us, like, it's a good time to build. It's a good time to kind of buckle down and, sort of consider those next steps and really get all the distractions away and just really focus in on what is the value that we're delivering to our community. And yeah, I mean, for us, it's just time to get to work and prove it, that this idea is something that will be important.
I think, I mean, there's that cliche at this point: bear markets are for builders, and you can't think of build without thinking of K money at this point. But it's so true though. Like this is really the time where, and I hear so many people who are like actually building, working on projects, creating stuff. They're like they relish this bear market because it's like all the distraction and noise of speculation and mania is like it's disappeared and it's quiet, and you can focus on doing what you said you were going to do, or creating a new idea and coming up with a new idea. And yeah, it's a good time, minus the fact that our bags are all down 90%. I wanna bring it back to the UltraDAO
Sure.
before we wrap up, because I think DAOs are fascinating, and there's a lot of people don't really understand how DAOs work, what a DAO even is. I'm curious from your perspective as someone who's founded, created, been part of, and is an active participant in a DAO. Like, what is required, in your opinion, for a DAO to like work properly or to be
Yeah,
a
it's a good
success?
question. I think, the first thing is like DAOs can be anything, right? So at the end of the day, it's just an organization structure that can be loosely defined, right? And the blockchain sort of helps us in that, we can vote on things, we can pool money, we can do all these things financially that sort of support those organizations, but they can be wildly different. And I think, to be successful, you really have to define sort of what your goals are, and also explain to people really well how can you get involved in achieving these goals. I think one thing that we've had trouble with at UltraDAO is getting people involved and having contributors sort of enter that are not super comfortable with the blockchain, or interacting as like sort of almost like a independent contractor in a sense, where they just request money to do things. And like it's a very
Yeah.
sort of foreign thing, because normally you think about getting a job and you're like, oh, I go apply, talk to some hiring manager and like 7 other people, and they tell me if they're going to give me money or not in exchange for me working for them, and then they give me a job description and all of that. DAOs are much more open-ended in a lot of ways, and so you have to sort of understand, how do we teach people what that interaction looks like, and how they can get involved, and how they can, because I mean, you look at something like Nouns, right, and they sort of are just like, hey, bring us a proposal that's really cool, tell us what you need,
Yeah.
and you might get funding for it, and you can just go do it, right? And that's scary to a lot of people. They don't have a whole lot of people submitting proposals, at least not serious proposals that are getting accepted. And I think like people need to realize this is a really cool time to sort of be alive and be a person that can do that type of work and those types of jobs. To be able to just say like, hey, I want to do this. Here's a proposal. Give me money. And they're like, yeah, cool. Like, it's just such a strange thing.
Yeah.
And so I think if you can really unlock, like, for people in their minds, the potential and an understanding of how to get that done, I think that makes it a lot more successful. And that's really, I think, where we're trying to head as more of like this creativity incubator of sorts.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think the word that really stood out to me there was unlock, and I think that's something that's really, it's unlocking your own personal mindset and worldview, really. Like in so many instances, we have to relearn how to live in this new blockchain Web3 world, because it is so different, even from like the beginning of, hey, look at a JPEG. This JPEG's worth thousands of dollars. Like that doesn't make
ether
sense.
rock.
Like, those of us
Look
who've
at my
grown up with
ether
the
rock.
internet,
It is $1 million.
I mean, that still doesn't make sense. But yeah, like you right click save, doesn't make sense. But eventually it's like, all right, you unlock this understanding of how this world works, and the potential is
Absolutely.
monumental. So, well, thank you so much. This has been a tremendously enjoyable conversation. Before we wrap up, 2 things. One, is there anything else you want to touch on or mention, tell people that we haven't touched on yet? And then secondly, if you want to tell people where they can find you, learn more about Woodies or UltraDAO if they're interested, all the good stuff.
Absolutely.
Share your
Yeah. So, I
links,
mean, you can
basically.
find me personally at Chris Wallace on Twitter. That's my Twitter handle. So, twitter.com/Chris Wallace. And then you can find basically all things UltraDAO related, including Woodies at ultradao.org.
Amazing. And we'll have links to those down below.
Awesome.
All right. Thank you so much, Chris.
Thank
It's
you,
been
sir.
a true pleasure.